You're already shivering, not because it's snowing. Oh no, that would be too merciful. Snow at least looks pretty. Snow at least gives you a warning. This, this is something else. The cold arrives in silence. It slips in through the cracks in the wall, hugs your ankles like a curse, and settles in your bones like it's paying rent. You haven't seen a single snowflake yet, but you know what's coming. You can feel it. Every joint in your body is screaming about it. You're lying on a lumpy straw mattress stuffed with, well, hopefully straw. It crunches when you shift, which isn't great because every movement sends a breeze of cold air rushing into your blanket, which, by the way, smells like goat and mildew. You don't remember the last time it was washed. You don't want to. The cottage is dark, except for the fire. It's not a good fire. It's a dying fire. A sulking, stubborn little flame doing its best in the hearth, surrounded by damp logs that hiss and spit like angry cats. Your toes have gone somewhere between numb and imaginary, and the tip of your nose keeps reminding you it's still attached by turning a lovely shade of blue. The baby started crying 2 hours ago, then stopped, then started again. No one had the energy to be annoyed. The older kids are bundled together like terrified chickens in the corner, sharing one scratchy blanket and one sour mood. They keep pulling it back and forth, mumbling things too tired to be mean. And outside, the cold presses against the walls. Not just the air, but something deeper. The kind of cold that sinks its fingers under doorways and between roof beams. The kind that doesn't care how many layers you wear. The kind that whispers, I'm not even trying yet. You throw on another tunic. Wool, rough and itchy. You find an old sock and wrap it around your neck because why not? Fashion isn't exactly the concern here. Survival is. Dignity? That's a springtime thing. The funny part is, you remember thinking last week, at least it's not snowing yet. You chuckled, smiled even. That smug little grin you wore when the wind was only annoying and not actively insulting. Look at you now, a humble potato in 5 layers, rocking gently by the fire, begging the embers not to die. Earlier that day, you helped bring in the last of the onions, not because you love onions, not because you had energy, but because onions don't complain, and they're less likely to die from the cold than your fingers. The ground was already stiff, not frozen, just stiff enough to make digging feel like a personal betrayal. And your breath? Oh, it's visible now, not just outside, inside. You exhale, and a little puff of ghostly steam curls up and disappears. The first time it happened, you laughed. The second time, you worried. Now, you just accept it. You live in a smokehouse. You breathe your own weather. And the animals? The cow refuses to come out of the shed. She knows better. The chickens have stopped laying eggs, which is fair. If you had to sleep standing up in a wooden box, surrounded by your own poop, you wouldn't feel particularly generous either. You thought about lighting a bigger fire, but then you remembered the wood, or rather, the lack of it. Because here's the part no one likes to talk about. Wood runs out. Fast. The dry stuff goes first, in September, with a cocky sort of joy. Then the slightly damp logs. Then the questionable ones with mushrooms. Then you're standing outside in November, hacking at a half-rotten stump with a dull axe, pretending it'll burn. It won't. It'll hiss. It'll cry. It'll mock you. And then it'll turn to ash without giving you a second of real heat. This is what happens every year. The snow may fall in December, but the suffering starts long before that. You start sleeping in shifts, rotating who gets closest to the fire. You start boiling everything, water, roots, whatever you can find, just to warm the air a bit. You hang damp clothes near the flames and pretend they'll dry. They don't. They just get warm enough to feel cold in new ways. You start hoping for snow, not because it's better, but because at least it makes the cold make sense. This gray, biting, pre-winter chill feels unfair, like being punished without a reason, like waiting for a slap that hasn't landed yet. The elders say things like, "Ah, you should have seen the frost of 42. This is nothing." You nod, you smile, but you want to scream because you weren't alive in 42 and you're cold now. Your toes are staging a protest. Your fingers are curled around a cup of something that's mostly boiled grass, pretending to be tea. Someone coughs, a deep, rattling sound from the other side of the room. No one says anything. You just glance at each other. A cough like that in November? That's not good. That's the kind of cough that comes with consequences. You close your eyes and try to sleep. It doesn't work. The wind outside sounds like it's having a tantrum. The roof groans, like it's tired of being a roof. At some point, someone throws a log on the fire. It sparks angrily, but at least it lives. The room glows orange for a few minutes. You can see faces again. Hollow cheeks, cracked lips, eyes that don't blink much anymore. But you're alive. You're still here. And so is the cold. It wraps around you like an old frenemy. Familiar, unwelcome, relentless. No snow yet, but you know it's coming. And somehow, that almost feels like relief, because at least when it snows, people stop pretending it's still autumn. You shift under the goat blanket. Someone's feet press against your back. You don't even flinch. Warmth is warmth, even if it's slightly damp and smells like cheese. The cold came first this year, like always. Like it had a key to the front door. It wasn't comfort, but it was life. And somehow, it was enough. You're awake, not because you want to be, not because it's morning, but because your feet are gone. Not in the literal sense, though you briefly wonder. No, they're still there. Technically, but frozen, numb, foreign, like someone else's. Cold, useless bricks are attached to your legs. The fire went out hours ago. You know this because your nose has joined the rebellion. So has your back and your fingertips. The warmth you felt before sleep was a lie, the kind only a flickering flame can tell. It promised comfort, and now it's dead. The blanket, if you can call it that, is stiff, damp in places. It smells like every animal in the barn took turns laying on it. You wrap it tighter anyway, because what else is there to do? You're out of options, and you're out of firewood. Last night, you burned a chair. Not a fancy chair, just the wobbly one near the door. But still, a chair. A thing meant for sitting. A thing that used to be useful. Now it's ash. That's how you know it's getting bad. When things with purpose get fed to the fire, you eye the stool in the corner. It's next. Your feet haven't moved in hours. You're scared to touch them, because what if you can't feel them at all? Or worse, what if you can? What if they're in that prickly, stabby, betray you for warmth stage of cold? You sit up, slowly. Every part of your body argues. Your joints feel like someone poured gravel into them overnight. The floor beneath you is stone, not smooth, not clean, just cold, cracked stone that remembers every winter and takes revenge each morning. You try to stand. It doesn't go well. Your knees lock. Your ankles wobble. You consider crawling, or maybe just laying back down and waiting for spring, or death, whichever comes first. Outside, the wind is howling. You can hear it screaming through the holes in the walls, rattling the shutters, mocking your entire existence. It's not even dramatic anymore, just rude. Someone's already up. You hear coughing, the wet, heavy kind, not the polite kind, not the kind that says, I'll be fine. No, this one says, good luck. You're on your own. In the corner, Grandma's wrapped in 5 layers of everything: skirts, shawls, old sacks. One of her boots is missing. You don't ask. Maybe it's in the firewood pile now. You reach for your socks. They're frozen, not dry, just stiff, like sad fabric popsicles. You slap them against your thigh to loosen them. They don't loosen. You put them on anyway. And the shoes? Well, you left them too close to the door. They're now abstract sculptures of ice and regret. You knock them against the wall. Nothing. You shove your feet in. They scream. You ignore them. That's the new relationship. Feet scream. You pretend not to hear. Breakfast. Funny. There's a pot on the hearth. It contains a liquid you refuse to describe. Bits of something float in it. Yesterday's roots, maybe. A hint of meat. Unlikely, but it's warmish. And in weather like this, warmish is a gourmet experience. You sip. It burns your tongue. Your fingers feel slightly alive now. So that's something. And you know what's worse? You have to go outside. There's a fence that broke under the wind. The goats are loose. Or dead. You're hoping for loose. You wrap yourself in a coat that smells like old mud and bad choices. It's heavy. It's itchy. It works. Barely. You push the door open. The wind hits you like a drunk uncle at a family reunion, loud, unwanted, and completely without boundaries. The cold bites your face. Your lips crack just from breathing. You step into snow, up to your knees. You didn't even know it snowed last night. Of course, you didn't. You were busy being unconscious and cold indoors. Now your frozen feet have company. Your legs join the misery. You find the goats. One stuck in a drift. The other is trying to chew a fence post. You guide them back. They resist. Because why wouldn't they? If you had fur and the option to live in a drift instead of that barn, you'd choose the drift too. You finally get them inside. You collapse onto a stool. And here's the funny part. Your feet are still cold. After all that, after soup, snow, movement, and goat wrangling, they're still frozen. You take off the shoes. Your socks come off with them, or rather, as them. They've fused. You laugh, because if you don't, you'll cry. You wiggle your toes. You feel something. Not quite pain, not quite comfort, just something that's hopeful. And then someone says the words you've been dreading. We're out of wood. Of course you are. You look at the stool, the one you're sitting on. You sigh. Goodbye, stool. It's been real. You grab the axe. You glance at the table. You glance at the broom. You make a mental list of flammable things and their emotional value. The feet stay cold. The options keep getting worse, but you're still moving, still laughing, still burning furniture in the name of warmth. And somehow, despite it all, that's survival. You're trying to sleep again, but your toes have other plans, mainly screaming. They're doing that thing where they burn and tingle at the same time, like they're mad at you for being poor, which is fair, really. Because if you had money, you'd have socks, and if you had socks, you wouldn't be in this mess, but you don't. So, here you are, huddled under a blanket that smells like damp straw and wet sheep, sharing body heat with a cousin you don't even like, listening to the wind rattle the shutters like it's looking for a way in. Spoiler, it'll find one. It always does. The fire is low. Not low like, let's add more logs, but low like, it's basically an ember now, and you better start burning something sentimental. You already used the wooden spoon yesterday. It didn't taste great. Your feet are tucked under your thighs. Your thighs are under someone else's ribs, and your ribs are under a thin wool tunic that has more holes than hope. You shift slightly, and your bare heel brushes the floor, a floor that feels less like wood and more like direct contact with the underworld. That's when the thought creeps in, the one you've been avoiding. What if this is frostbite? What if your toes are already dead and just haven't sent the memo to your brain yet? You press your fingers against them, no feeling. You press harder, still nothing. You consider biting one, just to be sure, but decide against it. There's not enough lighting to confirm whether it's still yours. Back in the day, which is a phrase peasants used to mean a time we made up to feel better, people had socks. Not everyone, of course, just the rich, or the very lucky, or the ones who could knit without crying. Wool socks were prized. They weren't warm, let's be clear. They were scratchy, misshapen, and often made from a sheep named Muck, who smelled exactly like he sounds. But they were better than nothing. And right now, nothing is exactly what you've got. You once tried to fashion makeshift socks from a burlap sack. It worked for 4 hours. Then it ripped. Then it froze. Then it froze to your foot. You screamed for 10 minutes and gained a new respect for frostbite. Your mother still talks about that one winter when old Agnes had silk stockings. You don't know if the story's true. Agnes also claimed she once saw a unicorn and once baked bread with actual flour. Either way, she died of cold the next year. So much for stockings. You're tempted to stand up just to see if your feet are still functional. But moving risks losing whatever pathetic warmth your body's clinging to. It's a cruel balance. Movement means life. Stillness means staying warm. Both are dangerous. Both are required. You pick stillness. For now, outside the wind howls. Not in a poetic, snowy night sort of way. No, this wind is petty. It's personal. It feels like it's mocking you through the cracks in the walls. The cold slips under the door like a thief, only it doesn't take anything. It just settles in and makes you suffer. You once heard someone say, Frostbite felt like knives. That's not accurate. Knives are clean. Frostbite is dirty, slow, ugly. It starts like this: a dull numbness, followed by tingling, followed by a weird, traitorous warmth that tricks you into thinking things are getting better. They're not. Your sister, the one with the big ideas, once tried to wrap her feet in animal guts. She said it worked for the Vikings. You didn't argue because she was holding a knife at the time and looked very serious. She spent the next day slipping around the yard smelling like a stew. Her frostbite got worse. The Vikings probably knew something she didn't. And then there's the other method. Just walk it off. Literally, get up, stomp around, curse loudly, rub your legs, shout at the cold, shake your fists at the ceiling like an angry Shakespeare character. It doesn't help, but it passes the time, which, in peasant winter terms, is as close as you get to fun. Earlier today, someone tried to sell you socks. Not real ones, of course, just scraps of felt stitched together with twine. They wanted 2 eggs for them. 2. You stared at the socks, stared at the eggs, and made a decision. Breakfast was more valuable than toes. You stand by that choice, mostly. But now, curled under this blanket, blinking into the smoky dark, you start to wonder what those socks might have felt like. Would they have helped? Would they have made a difference? Would your feet still feel like dying fruit? Probably not. But it's nice to imagine. Sometimes you think about what warmth must feel like. Real warmth. The kind you don't have to chase. The kind that fills a room and doesn't demand something in return. You imagine a pair of thick, soft socks. Clean, dry, maybe even striped. They slip over your feet like a promise. They hold you like a hug. You walk across the floor and don't wince. You go outside and the wind doesn't find you. You laugh. Your toes laugh too. Then the wind bangs the shutter again and you're back. No socks. Just frostbite. Your options are few. You can press your feet against someone else's back. Risky, but potentially life-saving. You can crawl toward the hearth and burn something else. Maybe your pride. Or you can close your eyes, accept the numbness, and whisper a prayer to the sock gods. You pull the blanket tighter. A tiny flame in the hearth sputters awake, just enough to throw a flicker of light on your feet. You stare at them. They don't look great, but they're still there. For now, it wasn't luxury, but it was life, and somehow that was still free. You are watching your cousin stuff hay into her shoes. She's not even trying to hide it. She's got one foot braced against the wall, straw in both hands, and the determined face of someone who's just accepted that dignity left town weeks ago. You ask, is that helping? She shrugs. It's not helping, which is the most honest review of medieval foot care anyone's ever given. The truth is, everyone's doing it now, wrapping their feet in hay. Not because it works, let's be clear, but because it's the only thing left between a little bit of warmth and goodbye toes. You tried it last night. The trick is to find dry hay, which is hilarious because nothing's dry. Not the air, not the roof, not even your thoughts. Everything smells like wet goat and smokes too much. But still, you picked through the stack, found the least moldy pieces, shoved them into your shoes, and hoped for the best. For a moment, it did feel warmer. Not warm, just less freezing, like your feet had been promoted from icy doom to itchy confusion. Then came the itching. Oh, the itching. Turns out hay is scratchy, really scratchy, like tiny needles fighting a war with your skin. And you can't take your boots off to scratch, because you might not get them back on. So you just sit there, twitching in place, pretending it's fine. That's what survival looks like now. Discomfort you can't complain about. The hay trick isn't new. The old folks say it's what they did back in the bad winters, which is funny, because this is one of those bad winters. Every winter is. That's the secret. It's always been awful. There's just new ways to cope. You once asked why no one just knits more socks. Grandmother stared at you like you asked why the moon doesn't bake pies. Because, she said, knitting takes time, and wool, and fingers that aren't frozen. Fair. So hey it is. Your neighbor tried moss, said it was softer. He limped for a week after. Turns out moss freezes just as fast as hay, and smells worse when it thaws. Someone else tried rabbit fur, but you have to have a rabbit first, and be willing to, well, you know. The kids cried, the feet stayed cold, no one tried it again. So now it's hay. Hay in shoes, hay in socks, hay layered inside the bed, curled around your feet like itchy little snakes. You wake up with hay in places hay should not be, and the sound, every step, crunch, crunch, crunch. You don't sneak anymore. There's no such thing as quiet. You walk across the cottage floor, sounding like you're chasing a herd of mice with every step. No one even looks up anymore. It's just what walking sounds like now. Earlier this morning, someone slipped on ice inside the cottage. That's how cold it's gotten. A leak in the roof let water pool near the door, and by dawn, it was a skating rink. She fell. Hay exploded from her boots, and everyone pretended not to laugh because her elbow hit the butter churn. It's too cold to laugh properly anyway. And speaking of butter, you tried rubbing it on your feet once. An old remedy. Didn't work. Just made your feet smell delicious to the dog. Lesson learned. The hay might be scratchy, but at least it doesn't lick you. Tonight, you're preparing your layers. Tunic, shawl, fur, and finally, the boots. You sit by the fire, what's left of it, and you stuff in the hay like you're making a pie you never want to eat. You pick out the worst bits, the sharp ones, the muddy ones. You find a nice, golden strip, almost soft. It'll probably stab you in your sleep, but at least you're trying. And that's the thing. You're always trying, because that's what winter demands here. Not comfort, not perfection, just effort, just enough stubbornness to shove straw in your boots and call it innovation. At some point, someone will suggest something new, a different trick, maybe wrapping feet in boiled linen, or standing near the oven until your heels smoke. You'll nod, you'll try it, you'll fail, and then you'll go right back to the hay, because it's there, because it sort of helps, because in this life, sort of is enough. You lie down, you pull the blanket over your head, you press your hay-wrapped feet against someone else's hay-wrapped feet. There's a moment of warmth. It doesn't last, but it's real. And that's something. Somewhere in the dark, the wind howls like it's laughing. The cottage creaks. A rat scurries near the wall. You close your eyes and whisper to your feet, "Stay with me. Spring's coming. Probably. It wasn't comfort, but it was life. And somehow, it was enough. You're looking at your feet. You're not proud of them. You're not mad either. You're just resigned because what's wrapped around them, that's not footwear. That's desperation tied with twine. Let's review. First, you took some cloth. Not clean cloth. Not even warm cloth. Just cloth. Probably used. Probably damp. Smelled like it had been keeping company with onions and regret. You wrapped that around your feet, like you were mummifying a peasant's dignity. Then came the fat, not butter, not lard, from a warm kitchen. This was animal fat, harvested from something that used to moo, thick, rubbery, smelled like a barn that lost a fight with a fire. You smeared it across the rags because someone older, someone who says things like, "This is how we did it during the long freeze," told you it would seal in the heat. Heat. That's a funny word. There's no heat, only varying levels of not quite dead. So now you've got feet wrapped in oily cloth, tucked into shoes made from stitched up leather that has definitely seen better centuries. Your toes slide around inside like meat in an old stew. It squishes, it sloshes, it makes a sound when you walk. A wet, slippery schloop that no boot should ever make. And yes, these are your boots now, because boots, real ones, were for the rich, or the soldiers, or the merchant's son who once bragged about having 3 pairs. You wonder if he ever stepped in cow dung with those fancy boots. Probably not. Probably had someone else do the stepping for him. But you're stomping through slush and rags dipped in grease and calling it innovation. Earlier today, someone said you smelled like soup. You thanked them because honestly, that's the most nourishing thing you've heard in weeks. The fat is supposed to act like a barrier, like wax on a candle, like hope. The problem is, after an hour, it melts into the fabric and starts leaking into your skin. So now your feet aren't just cold, they're slippery. You're walking on your own personal oil spill. You slid twice this morning, once near the latrine. That one was close. Dignity took a hit, but the boots held. Kind of. The second time, you just laid there, looked up at the gray sky, and whispered, "This is fine." No one came to help. Everyone's dealing with their own grease rag problems. And the smell, you've stopped noticing it, mostly because the entire hut smells like unwashed socks, wet hay, and fear. At least now, you blend in. The fat attracts the dog. It keeps sniffing your ankles like you're a walking snack. You've started sleeping with your legs curled under you, just in case it gets bold. The other night, it licked your boot while you were half asleep. You screamed. It ran. You cried. The room went back to normal. That's the rhythm of winter now. Make a mess. Wrap it in a worse mess. Call it survival. Some say the fat helps keep out frostbite. Others say it just delays it. Honestly, you're not sure. Your big toe feels numb, but is it cold numb or gone numb? There's a difference, and you're not ready to find out. You miss socks. Actual woven, clean socks. You imagine slipping into a pair. No grease, no itching, no fear of dogs, just comfort. Then you blink, and you're back. The fire's down to coals. Your boots, if you can still call them that, are leaning near the hearth, steaming slightly. The rags are stained. The fat has soaked through. There's a small puddle forming. You look away. Someone offers you a strip of new cloth. You take it gratefully. Later, you'll dab off the excess fat, re-wrap, re-grease. Pretend it's helping, because pretending is part of it now. Pretending you're warm, pretending you're okay. Pretending you're not slowly becoming a candle with legs. Outside the Yaboru wind claws at the door, you can hear the frost whispering through the cracks. But your boots are ready. Sort of. They may be ugly. They may be weirdly edible, but they're better than nothing. Just barely. You settle into your blanket, feet tucked under someone else's knees. You sigh. You're tired. You smell like broth. You'll survive. Probably. It wasn't fashion. It wasn't comfort. But it was life. And somehow, it was enough. You're lying on your side, knees pulled up to your chest, blanket clenched so tight your fingers have gone white. You haven't moved in hours, not because you're comfortable, there's no such thing, but because moving means letting cold air in. And right now, cold air hurts. Your boots are still on. Of course they are, because taking them off means waking up with feet you don't recognize, blackened, swollen, or worst of all, nothing at all. So you sleep with them on, if you're lucky enough to have them. If not, well, you improvise. Rags, hay, animal fat, anything that can pretend to be a shoe, anything that might convince winter to look the other way for just one more night. But tonight, you do have shoes, if you can call them that. They're stiff, cracked, smell like smoke and regret, but they're yours. You found them last autumn, buried under a pile of rotting firewood, still clinging to their shape, like they had dreams once. They don't fit, not well, not comfortably, but they go on, and they stay on. You used to think sleeping with your shoes on meant something bad had happened. A drunken night, a fire, some kind of emergency. Now it just means winter, because once the cold truly sets in, your boots become your second skin. You eat in them, work in them, sleep in them. Sometimes you forget what your feet even look like. And honestly, you're not in a rush to remember. A few nights ago, someone took theirs off, just for a minute, said they needed to air out. They didn't make it back on. The leather froze stiff, curled up like angry bread crusts. Took 3 people and a prayer to get them open again. By then, her toes had already started to turn. Lesson learned. The boots stay on, but not everyone has them. You remember what it was like before, when you were younger, when boots was a generous word. Just wrappings, mostly. Scraps of whatever wasn't too wet or too sharp. You'd layer them around your feet, like a child pretending to understand warmth. You'd walk carefully. You'd sleep carefully. You'd cry a little when no one looked. And on the worst nights, you'd dream of real boots, lined with fur, sewn tight, dry inside. You never imagined you'd get a pair. And now that you have them, you'd rather lose a tooth than let them go. They're always near the fire, but not too near. You learned that the hard way. One burn mark on the toe was enough to humble you. Now, they get just close enough to soften, to thaw, to become wearable again before you slip into bed with them still laced. The laces don't do much. Half of them broke weeks ago, so you tie them with twine, or thin strips of old cloth, or in one case, horsehair. It works. Sort of. Some people whisper that sleeping in shoes is bad for the soul, that it invites dark dreams, that it means you're living like an animal. You laugh. Quietly. Animals probably sleep warmer than this. You pull your legs closer, pressing the boots into the softest part of your blanket. You try not to breathe too deeply. The air in the cottage is sharp, cold smoke, ash, the faint scent of stew that may or may not have contained anything edible. Someone stirs across the room. A cough, a grunt, a muttered curse. Their shoes are off. You wince. You hope they survive the night. Because here's the thing. In this life, shoes aren't just shoes. They're armor. They're shelter. They're the last line between your body and the world outside, the door. When the cold comes, not just chill, but real cold, the kind that hunts you in your sleep, it doesn't knock. It walks right in, through the floorboards, through the windows, through the thin slats of wood stacked like they could keep anything out. Your feet are its first victims. So you sleep with your boots on, if you have them. And if you don't, you pray. You layer old cloth, hope, and whatever scraps are left. You curl around the fire. You curse your luck. You listen to the wind and wonder if it will ever stop howling. And in the morning, if your feet still move, if they still feel, you thank the boots, the ragged, crusted, half-frozen, too tight boots, because they saved you. Again, it wasn't comfort, but it was life, and somehow it was enough. You're awake again, not because you wanted to be, because the fire is gone. You can tell without even opening your eyes. The warmth is missing. The air has turned to glass. Your breath puffs in little clouds. And that one toe, the stubborn, one that always flirts with frostbite first, is numb in a way that feels personal. The fire is dead, and with it, a certain kind of hope. You open one eye. Everything's gray. Not the soft, dreamy gray of dawn. No, this is the color of ash, smoke, and the inside of your own regrets. The hearth is dark, just a hollow, black mouth. No embers, no flicker, no hiss, nothing but silence. You stare at it the way a starving man might stare at an empty bowl. Like if you look long enough, maybe something will come back. It doesn't. Someone coughs in the corner, the raspy kind. Wet, real. It echoes in the silence like a warning. No one speaks. No one moves. Because moving means cold, and cold means pain. You're still wrapped in the same blanket as last night. A heavy, sour-smelling patchwork of wool, dirt, and old promises. You feel every thread now, every seam, every lie it ever told about being warm enough. You know you should get up. Try to relight the fire. Check the woodpile. Break apart the old stool in the corner. If it comes to that. But your body isn't interested. It's stuck in that dangerous place, between frozen and exhausted. You're not even shivering anymore, just buzzing faintly, like your blood is thinking about giving up, but hasn't informed your heart yet. Yesterday, the fire was everything. It boiled the water, It softened the turnips. It dried the boots. It lit the room just enough to see your sister roll her eyes when you said something dumb. It gave you something. Now it's just a circle of ash, cold, still, gone. You think back to how carefully you built it last night, the way you blew gently at the kindling, whispered at it like it was a friend, the way the sparks danced for a moment, like they might stay, like they might care, but they never do they? Because fire is loyal to no one. It flickers, it warms, and then it disappears. Like every other good thing in winter, someone near you stirs, pulls their coat tighter. You hear teeth clack, that sound people make when they try to talk through a chattering jaw. No one says anything. Not really. Words feel useless without warmth to carry them. You finally sit up. Your joints ache, knees stiff, spine unforgiving. The soles of your feet tingle like they've been asleep for a year. You shuffle to the hearth, kneel down, stare into it. There's nothing to save. The wood pile is nearly gone. You've already burned everything reasonable. The table's missing, a leg. The broom handle is just a nub. The spoon, the good spoon, is ash. The only dry logs left are imaginary. You glance at the door. Beyond it, snow, wind, a world that doesn't care if you live or freeze. You could go outside, try to find a fallen branch, maybe borrow from the neighbors if they haven't already burned their own roof. But that means opening the door, and opening the door means letting the cold in. More cold, the kind that doesn't just sneak in, the kind that stays. Instead, you stay kneeling, staring at the ash, remembering, remembering what warmth felt like. Not heat, not fire, but warmth. That gentle hum in your bones when you weren't scared of the night, when your breath didn't cloud in front of your face, when the fire was alive and you believed it would last. But belief is a luxury now, and luxuries don't survive the winter. You press your hands against the stones of the hearth. They're cold, of course, but you hold them anyway, like a gravestone, like a friend who left without saying goodbye. Someone behind you finally speaks. What now? You don't answer, because if you do, it'll sound like I don't know, and no one wants to hear that. Instead, you reach for the firewood basket. Empty. You tip it upside down anyway, just in case hope got stuck to the bottom. It didn't. You check the corners, the shadows, the bin by the door. Nothing. The fire is dead. So is hope. But you're not. Not yet. You pull your coat tighter, stuff your feet back into the stiff, damp shoes that barely pass as boots. Your fingers protest with every movement, but they move, so that's something. You stand up. Slowly, you look at the door. The fire won't build itself. The world won't warm itself. The only thing standing between you and nothing is effort. Ugly, cold, painful effort. So you take a step. It wasn't comfort. It wasn't hope, but it was you, still alive, still moving. And somehow, that was enough. You're sitting by the fire, or what's left of it, with something sharp in your hands and something worse on your feet. Bark. You're wearing bark, and you're trying to convince yourself it's normal, because this is what winter does. It breaks rules. It breaks backs. It breaks whatever you were supposed to wear. and replaces it with whatever hasn't been burned yet. You used to dream about wool socks, thick, soft, full of sheepy warmth and dignity, the kind of socks you'd never take off, the kind you imagine queens wearing while sipping warm wine. But dreams don't keep your feet warm. Bark does. Kind of. It started as a joke. Someone said, "No wool? Wrap your feet in tree bark." You laughed until you realized they weren't joking, until they handed you a strip of birch and said, "It's soft if you peel it right." So here you are, peeling bark like it's a holiday project, wrapping it around your toes like it's a luxury fabric, lacing it with string made from fraying rope and false hope. It cracks when you walk. It creaks when you sit. It itches constantly, but it stays on, and it hasn't frozen to your skin yet. And in a winter like this, that's what counts as a win. Earlier this week, you watched someone line their shoes with moss. Brave soul. Their boots smelled like pond water for 3 days. Bark, at least, smells like the forest, like something noble, like a tree that had better plans. You've tried layering, bark on the outside, hay on the inside. It's like building a sandwich for your foot that nobody wants to eat. But it works, kind of. It buys you time, keeps the wind from slicing straight through your toes. Sort of. The hardest part is the sound. You can't sneak anywhere. Crunch, creak, snap. Every step announces your suffering like a fanfare of bad decisions. Even the dog gives you side eyes when you walk by. But then again, the dog's wearing cabbage leaves, so no one's really in a position to judge. You remember wool. Barely. Your older sister had a pair. She only wore them on feast days. Would pull them out of a box, like treasure, press them against her face, then pull them on, like royalty. They were scratchy, too big, and had a hole in the toe, but they were warm. And now, long gone, burned for fire, sacrificed with a sad little prayer and a lot of tears. Bark doesn't burn well, ironically. Too wet, too stubborn. But as clothing, it's there. It wraps, it holds, it doesn't fall apart like cloth. You tried to soften it once, boiled it in water and vinegar. The smell nearly took out the whole cottage. You wore it anyway, because this is winter now. You don't ask, "Is it comfortable?" You ask, "Will it work?" And bark works. Kind of. You try not to think about what your feet look like inside. You haven't seen them in days. Haven't dared remove the layers. If they're black, you don't want to know. If they're blistered, too bad. If they're somehow still pink, well, that would just be suspicious. You press your bark-wrapped foot closer to the fire. The heat wakes something in your skin. A little spark of sensation. Maybe pain. Maybe hope. Hard to tell anymore. Across the room, someone mutters, "I miss socks." You nod, quietly, but you don't say anything. Because if you start missing things, it gets harder to live without them. So you just adjust the bark. Pull it tighter. Knot the twine again. The fire hisses. The wind howls. The roof leaks. And you're wearing a tree and calling it fashion. It wasn't comfort. It wasn't style, but it was survival. And somehow, it was enough. You're curled up under a blanket that smells like pickled onions and old sweat, teeth clenched, feet throbbing, and all you can hear is Grandma's voice from across the room. Cold toes, build character. You don't respond, mostly because your jaw is frozen shut, partly because if you open your mouth, the wind might crawl inside and set up camp. It's the kind of cold that feels personal, like winter read your diary and decided to attack your weaknesses directly. You haven't felt your toes in hours. You think they're still there. You hope they're still there. But if someone told you they'd wandered off during the night, you wouldn't argue. Grandma's sitting near the hearth, as close as she can get without catching fire, wrapped in 3 shawls, a wool skirt, and something that might be a curtain. She's still somehow warmer than you. Her hands are knitting, not socks. Heavens no, but another blanket you'll fight your siblings for later. You kids, she says, not looking up. You don't know what real cold is. You're tempted to argue. You don't, because A, you're conserving energy, and B, last time someone argued, she threw a wooden spoon at them. In her defense, it was already broken. In her other defense, she meant to hit them. According to Grandma, everything builds character. Wet shoes builds character. No food builds gratitude. Getting licked by the cow because your shoes are made of soup-stained leather builds humility. But cold toes? Apparently, that's where the real personality growth begins. They make you tougher, she says, poking the fire like it owes her money. Soft feet make soft people. You want to be strong? Start with frozen toes. You glance down at your feet, buried under a tangle of old rags and one of your cousin's mittens. You wiggle your big toe. Nothing. You wiggle it again. Still nothing. Congratulations. You're growing stronger by the minute. You wonder how much character your body can take before your soul files for frostbite insurance. Yesterday, your little brother tried to sneak his feet into Grandma's chair space. She slapped his ankle with a knitting needle and told him to go stand in the snow to appreciate what warmth means. He did. He hasn't smiled since. The thing is, Grandma has a point. Kind of. She's survived more winters than you've had. Birthdays. She knows all the tricks. She once wrapped her feet in rabbit skins soaked in vinegar, said it was the secret to toasty toes. You tried it once. All you got was vinegar feet and one very angry rabbit. But Grandma, she walked 5 miles in snow once, barefoot, allegedly, just to get flour, or so she says. You suspect it was actually 3 steps to the pantry, but no one's brave enough to question her. You shuffle closer to the fire, dragging your feet like they're made of stone. Grandma watches you with a smirk. Don't get too close, she warns. You warm 'em too fast. They'll crack like eggs. You freeze mid-step. Not literally. Not yet. But close. So you settle for a reasonable distance. You stick your feet out just far enough to feel the ghost of heat. It hurts. It really hurts. The cold's been in your bones so long, even a little warmth feels like punishment, like you're being melted back to life in slow, painful stages. Grandma nods approvingly. There it is. That's growth. You whimper. Character development apparently comes with blisters. A log collapses in the hearth. Sparks fly. For a moment, the room glows orange. You can see everyone's faces, hollow cheeks, pink noses, Eyes that say, we stopped pretending this is normal weeks ago, but no one complains. Because Grandma's watching, and Grandma likes the cold. She says it keeps people honest. You show me a man who's never had cold toes, she says, pouring lukewarm tea into a chipped mug. And I'll show you someone who doesn't know what suffering means. You nod, slowly, carefully. Your joints are stiff. Your knees sound like tree branches. Your feet, wrapped in 3 layers of regret, twitch once more. You're building character. At this rate, you'll be the most developed person in the entire village. The fire crackles again. Grandma hums an old song. The dog sneezes and burrows deeper into its pile of questionable cloth. And you accept it. The cold, the ache, the slowly returning sensation in your pinky toe. The knowledge that tomorrow will be just as bad, and Grandma will still say it's good for you. It's not comfort, it's not warmth, but it's survival. And somehow, for now, it's enough. You're sitting on the floor, fire barely hanging on, holding something in your hands that used to be part of a pig. Not bacon, not ham, not anything glorious. Nope, you're holding pigskin, and you're about to wrap it around your foot like it's a precious family heirloom, because that's where we are now. You glance around the room. No one's judging you, mostly because they're too busy boiling turnip skins or chewing on the same piece of bread for the 3rd time this week. Also, because pigskin socks have become a thing, not a normal thing, not a comfortable thing, but a thing people do now. Why? Because wool is gone. Cloth is a rumor, and regular socks burned beautifully 3 nights ago. So, pig, you stretch the hide. It's stiff, greasy, smells like sadness and faint regret. But it's what you've got. You tried drying it by the fire, but it curled up like it was trying to escape this whole situation. Honestly, relatable. It's not even shaped like a sock. It's just a roughly rectangular piece of pig. You fold it, wrap it, tuck the end under your toes, and pray it holds. For a moment, it sort of does. And then, the squelch. That unforgettable, unmistakable squelch of skin meeting sweat, meeting cold. You pause. It's fine. Everything's fine. You repeat the lie and keep rapping. Once it's on, it almost works. It's warmish, insulating, a little slippery. Your foot kind of slides around inside it like it's in a tiny meat canoe, but it's not freezing. So, by winter standards, it's luxury. You remember when socks used to be cute, colorful, a little holy maybe, but charming. Now you're fashioning footwear out of livestock and hoping it doesn't make you sick. Your cousin made a matching pair, bragged about it, called it rustic innovation, then tripped going outside and slid halfway to the latrine. Pigskin has friction issues, but it holds heat. Not much, but more than bare feet. And when it's 15 out and the wind is screaming through every crack in the cottage and your toes feel like someone else's, you'll take it. Desperation has no dress code. The older folks nod approvingly. Grandma muttered something about wasting nothing and offered to help stitch another pair. She used a chicken bone as a needle. You didn't ask questions. That night, someone asked if this counted as wearing shoes. No one answered Because defining shoes in this context is like defining happiness in a famine, blurry, optimistic, and not especially helpful. You're not sure if your pigskin sock is working or if your foot is just numb now. Could be both, could be neither. You shift it closer to the fire, trying not to melt it. You think it's fireproof. You're not eager to test it. There's talk of boiling the next hide before using it. Someone said it softens it, makes it more pliable. Someone else said it just turns it into soup. Everyone nodded, like that made sense. So now you've got soup on one foot and rawhide on the other. You're a walking, limping, squeaky contradiction, and you're proud of it because that's what winter does. Strips you down until dignity is optional and pig parts are repurposed into survival gear. You don't love it, but you're here. You didn't freeze last night. Your toes still wiggle. You smell faintly like stew, and the dog keeps following you around. But you're alive. And when someone new in the village says, I ran out of socks, you'll grin and hold up your foot like a prize. Try pig, you'll say, and they will, because when it's cold enough, even a pig's leftovers can feel like hope. It wasn't fashion, it wasn't breathable, but it was warmth, and somehow that was enough. You wake up cold, not regular cold, not even I can see my breath inside cold. No, this is personal. This cold feels like betrayal. You stretch, you reach for your boots, and that's when you notice. It's gone. Your left shoe is gone. Again. You sit up slowly, blinking into the smoky dawn haze, like maybe, this is a bad dream. Maybe your left shoe is just hiding behind the firewood, or tucked under the blanket, or wrapped lovingly in goat fur by a well-meaning cousin. But no, it's gone. And deep down, you know what happened, because this isn't the first time. You stare at your one remaining shoe, the right one. It's cracked, stiff, and smells faintly like boiled onions and horse spit. But it's yours. You'd rather lose a tooth, maybe two. You scan the room. Everyone's asleep, or pretending to be. You know how it goes. Someone wakes in the night, feet frozen, pride gone, and they see your boots by the fire, drying, steaming gently, looking just warm enough to seduce. So they take one, always just one, because they don't want to be greedy. You shuffle forward, foot half wrapped in last night's hay, and hiss, Really? Again? Someone snores in reply. Someone else fakes it. You used to name your shoes. That's how precious they were. The left one was old reliable. The right one, trusty. Together, they made you feel invincible. Now, old reliable is gone, and trusty's just sitting there, confused, lonely, abandoned. You try to be rational. Maybe it wasn't theft. Maybe someone borrowed it. Maybe they'll bring it back. Huh. Last time this happened, the left shoe turned up in the goat pen, covered in something that wasn't mud. That was the day you stopped believing in karma. The worst part is what comes next. You hobble around, looking under blankets, behind crates, inside the firewood pile. People watch you with the calm indifference of those who have absolutely stolen shoes before and will probably do it again. You find a child wearing mismatched boots. Yours isn't one of them. You give them a long stare anyway. just in case. You ask Grandma. She shrugs. Should have tied them to your ankles. Thanks, Grandma. You limp to the door in one boot and one frostbitten foot wrapped in what might be a curtain scrap. You look ridiculous. You sound like a pirate on a bad day. Outside, the snow bites. The cold doesn't care about your shoe situation. You hop through it, trying to do chores like nothing's wrong. By noon, your foot is a numb lump of sadness. By evening, someone quietly places your left shoe near the hearth. Still warm, still damp, still undeniably yours. You don't say anything. You don't ask who took it. You just nod, because in this house, in this weather, in this winter, that's how apologies work. You slip your foot back into old reliable, and for a moment, life feels almost balanced. Almost. Because you know it'll happen again. You'll fall asleep. You'll dream of socks. And someone will quietly, carefully steal your left shoe. Again, it wasn't justice. It wasn't fair. But it was survival. And somehow, that was enough. You open your eyes and immediately regret it. Because nothing hurts more than waking up still cold. Actually, scratch that. One thing hurts more. Waking up and realizing the floor is ice and the bed is worse. You shift a little, just a little. The blanket makes a crunching sound, not a cozy, quilted rustle, a crunch, like someone wrapped you in a stale cracker and said, "Good luck, peasant." Your breath fogs the air in a slow, dramatic puff, like it's sighing with you. You inhale. The air smells like wet wool, burnt soup, and something suspiciously goat-like. And it's sharp, ice air sharp, the kind that turns your nostrils into tiny, frozen caves and makes your teeth ache just for existing. You're lying on the bed, if you can call it that. Technically, it's a pile of a straw on a wooden platform. At least, it was straw. Now, it's more of a frosty, lumpy mat of regrets and flattened weeds that once had dreams of being insulation. You swear it crackles when you move. You try to shift positions. Mistake. Your elbow grazes the bed frame, and it's like touching a blade, not metaphorically, literally. You jerk your arm back, like you've been stabbed by winter itself. And you know what's funny? This is the bed, the best place in the cottage. You glance toward the floor. Spoiler, it's worse. The floor is made of stone, cold stone, unforgiving stone. It's like the earth itself looked up at the roof, saw the lack of insulation, and said, "Yeah, I'm gonna make this personal." Frost has crept up from the corners. You can see it. Little white spider webs crawling along the edges of the room, like it's decorating for a haunted house, one where the ghosts are all frozen solid. You pull your knees tighter to your chest, trying to hold on to whatever warmth your body didn't surrender overnight. You've layered everything: two tunics, a blanket, someone else's discarded scarf, and the sleeve of a coat you found in the barn. It's not enough. It's never enough. You hear someone groan from the other side of the room. They rolled onto the floor last night. They haven't moved since. You pray silently that they're alive, then immediately feel bad for not helping. But also, you're not stepping on that ice floor unless it's a rescue mission. And right now, it's just a light concern. The fire is dead, obviously. It's not even pretending anymore. The ashes look ashamed, like they know they failed you. You consider getting up, relighting it, doing something noble. Then your toe grazes the corner of the bed frame again, and the pain reminds you why you don't do noble things at 4 a.m. The thing no one tells you about winter is that sometimes everything is cold, not just the air, not just the water, everything, the floor, the walls, your spoon, your pillow, your bed, your soul. Even the bread is cold, even your dreams. You remember when beds were safe, warm, a place to escape. Now, they're just a slightly elevated version of outside. Once, when you were little, you slept in a pile of cousins for warmth, like a litter of shivering human puppies. It was itchy, loud. Someone kicked in their sleep and gave you a nosebleed, but you were warm. Now everyone's grown. Now it's every peasant for themselves. You adjust your position again. Your hip bone complains. The straw's packed so tight, you might as well be sleeping on a frozen bench. You feel something sharp under your blanket. A piece of twig, maybe. You don't bother removing it. It's fine. Everything's fine. This is the part of winter where you stop noticing the cold and start negotiating with it. If you let me keep the feeling in my left foot, you whisper to the ceiling, you can have the right one. Deal? No answer, just the creak of the beams and the gentle sound of someone else's nose whistling nearby. You sigh. The floor is ice. The bed is ice. But you're here, still breathing, still curled up like a defeated hedgehog in a crunchy old nest. Still you. You close your eyes again, trying to remember what warmth felt like. A fire, a blanket, maybe a hug. You'll get there. Maybe not today, maybe not this week, but someday. And until then, you'll stay on the frozen bed because the floor is worse. It wasn't comfort, it wasn't rest, but it was a place to survive the night. And somehow, that was enough. You're sitting by the hearth, half awake, fully miserable, and staring at a rock. Not a magic rock, not a shiny, beautiful gemstone of hope kind of rock, just a rock, flat, heavy, gray, the kind of thing you'd normally trip over in the yard and curse at. But tonight, it's heating near the fire. Tonight, it's hope, because in this house, in this century, and in this freezing, toe-killing winter, the only spa treatment you're getting is hot rocks for your feet. It started with Grandma, as all slightly dangerous ideas do. She said, back in my day, we didn't have socks or boots or fancy fires. We had rocks, and if they were hot, we were happy. So now you're trying it because your feet feel like forgotten icicles, and because the wind outside sounds like it's sharpening knives on the roof. You poke the rock with a stick. It hisses, promising, not too hot, not yet. That's good. You've heard the stories. Someone once tried it too early and ended up with second-degree burns and a very confused doctor. The trick is patience. Wait for the fire to kiss the rock, not marry it. You wrap your feet in rags because you're not a complete fool, and slowly, very slowly, rest them against the stone. At first, nothing. Then, warmth. Faint, cautious, magical warmth. The kind that creeps in like it's not sure it's allowed to be here. You sigh, loudly, happily, almost tearfully. It feels like someone remembered you exist. You glance around. Everyone's watching you, jealous, envious, deeply invested in your relationship with this rock. One of the kids starts eyeing a second stone near the fire. Another already slipped one under their blanket earlier. Rock wars are coming. But for now, this one is yours. You curl your toes, testing the heat. They move. That's a good sign. Last night, you weren't so sure. The rags steam a little. Not dangerously, just enough to feel dramatic. You close your eyes and imagine you're somewhere warm. A bathhouse, maybe. A field in spring. A bakery with your feet tucked near the oven. But nope, you're still here, on a wooden bench, inside a house that leaks, covered in 6 layers of hand-me-down fabric. But for the first time all day, maybe all week, your feet don't hurt, and that's a win. Grandma nods from her corner. Told you, she says. Rocks don't lie. You nod back, too numb to thank her properly, too scared to move. If you lift your foot now, the warmth might escape, and you'll never catch it again. Your cousin whispers, Can I have a turn soon? You pretend not to hear. The fire pops. The rock hisses. It's perfect. You think about bottling this moment, putting it in a jar, labeling it peace, and opening it when the wind howls too loud next week. But instead, you just press your feet closer. The heat is fading. You can feel it. Slowly, the rock is returning to its normal self. Cold, hard, indifferent. But while it lasts, it's heaven. A hot rock for your frozen feet. Not comfort, not luxury, but warmth. And somehow, that was enough. You're in bed, if you can call it that. Really, you're just buried under 3 blankets that smell like goat spit and old cabbage, sharing body heat with people you love slightly less than you did yesterday, because someone's toes are on your toes, and someone else's are under them, and someone, and this is unforgivable, just tried to warm their frozen heel on your shin. Welcome to toe huddling, the proud, unspoken invention of your very desperate, very cold little village. Started quietly. At first, you all just slept close, reasonable, innocent. Then, winter laughed in your face, the kind of cold that made the inside of your nostrils crack and turned the water bucket into a solid block before you even got out of bed. Next thing you knew, someone muttered, Move your feet closer, and the huddling began, not out of love, not out of affection, out of survival. Now, your sleeping arrangement is less family unit and more pile of tangled limbs and frozen complaints. The rules are simple. Toes must touch toes. Ankles may cross if no other option is available. No, one gets exclusive access to the warmest foot. That's communism. Complaints are allowed, but only in whispers. Loud whining lets the cold in. Grandma says her generation did it better, that they huddled in tighter shapes, that they formed spirals, like human cinnamon rolls, and no one ever lost a toe. You tried that once, ended up with someone's elbow in your mouth and a sprained wrist. Now it's just the classic, side by side, toes overlapping, foot burrito formation. You used to have boundaries. Used to flinch when someone's toenail grazed your ankle. Now you'll take any heat you can get, even if it's from your cousin's foot that smells like pickled despair. The first 10 minutes are the worst. All the toes are ice cubes. No one wants to be the first to make contact. You all lie there like stubborn logs, waiting for someone to admit defeat. Eventually, someone does, usually the youngest. I'm freezing, they whisper. Fine, someone grumbles, and two sets of frozen toes meet in the dark. It's awkward, intimate, horrifying, but it helps. Soon, others join, like a slow motion game of frostbitten twister. Left toe on cousin, right heel under sibling, big toe gently tapping the family dog for moral support. And somehow, it starts working. The warmth spreads, tiny, pitiful, beautiful warmth. Your feet buzz, your calves twitch. You sigh, someone else sighs louder. The pile settles. There is peace until someone shifts, or snores, or says something unforgivable like, "Whose foot is that?" The moment cracks. Realignment begins. You try to stay, still. Keep the heat. Guard it like treasure, because that heat is the only thing between you and a sleepless night of toe regret. In the morning, you'll pretend it didn't happen. Everyone will. You'll all wake up pretending you definitely didn't fall asleep, spooning your brother's kneecap and cuddling your aunt's arch. But you'll remember, deep in your soul, in your thawed, slightly moist socks, because toe huddling works. It's not glamorous, it's not poetic, but it keeps the cold out, barely. You glance around the room one last time before drifting off. The fire is down to coals. The windows are rimmed with frost. Someone whispers a sleepy curse, and somewhere in the chaos of bodies and wool, your foot finds another. You don't even flinch. You're a villager now. And this is how you survive. It wasn't comfort. It wasn't space. But it was warmth. And somehow, that was enough. You open your eyes. Something feels wrong. Not emotionally wrong. Not existential dread wrong. No, this is a physical wrong. A why is my blanket heavier than usual? Kind of wrong. You reach down, shift the itchy pile of rags and wool, and your hand lands on something cold, hard, feathery. You lift the blanket. It's a chicken, a frozen chicken. Inside the house, you blink once, twice, still frozen, still feathery, still very, very here. This isn't how the day was supposed to start. You were hoping for fire, maybe lukewarm tea, possibly, dare you dream, slightly warmer toes. Instead, you got a poultry popsicle. It's Henrietta, the brave one. She usually sleeps near the hearth, right by the stones. Smart girl, good instincts, better than most of the family, if we're being honest. But last night was different. Last night, the fire went out. Again, you were too tired to fix it. Everyone was. The wood was damp, the coals were sulking, and the wind howled so loud the rafters whispered, "Good luck," as you climbed into bed. And now, poor Henrietta is Exhibit A in the ongoing lawsuit titled, "Why Winter is Trying to Kill." You, you lift her gently. She's stiff, wings tucked in, beak slightly open in what you can only describe as a frozen squawk. You carry her to the hearth, like she might thaw back into consciousness if you just believe hard enough. Someone stirs behind you. Mornin', they croak, through cracked lips and frost-coated breath. Chicken's frozen, you mumble. They don't even blink. Again? Apparently, this is becoming a pattern. Last week, it was one of the goats. Not frozen solid, thank goodness. Just crunchy. Took 3 hours by the fire before she could walk without sounding like a bag of kindling. You remember the old days? You know, 3 winters ago, when the inside of the house was warmer than the outside, when you could leave your boots near the door without them turning into leather ice sculptures, when chickens lived through the night. Now, now, it's a poultry lottery. Henrietta sits by the hearth like a small, frozen monument to rural failure. You pile some kindling near her, hoping the fire will cooperate. It doesn't. It coughs once, flickers, then dies. Henrietta doesn't move, but you swear she looks more disappointed than dead. You wrap a rag around her, not because it'll help, but because you have to do something. You can't bury her. The ground's frozen. You can't eat her. Not yet. She's too solid. You can't not care. She was practically family. You sit back, cold floor, colder air, and in your lap, a chicken that now doubles as a meat rock. Someone walks past, barefoot. They glance down at her. She gonna make it? You shrug. Maybe. She's stubborn. You don't mention the fact that you just tried to check for a pulse and weren't entirely sure where a chicken pulse is. The day begins. Someone's boiling potato peels for breakfast. Someone else is trying to chip the ice off the water bucket using a spoon. And you're still sitting by the hearth, bonding with your poultry popsicle. Henrietta will thaw, or she won't. Either way, you'll light the fire, or try. You'll boil something, soup, tea, despair. You'll wrap your feet in questionable cloth. You'll argue over who gets the driest corner of the blanket tonight, because that's what winter is now, a daily battle against freezing, hunger, and the occasional surprise corpse chicken. It wasn't fair, it wasn't normal, but it was survival. And somehow, even that was enough. You're sitting near the fire, wrapped in 3 layers of scratchy wool, crusty rags, and the faint smell of old turnips. And you're proud of yourself. Why? Because you didn't bathe. Not today. Not yesterday. Probably not last Tuesday either. And your feet are thrilled. They are dry, intact, slightly crunchy, and, most importantly, not falling off. See, in your village, not bathing isn't laziness. It's strategy. It's survival. It's how you keep all 10 toes through December. Because the minute you expose bare feet to freezing water, that's the minute winter claims a piece of you. There was a time you thought washing your feet was healthy. Back in summer, when the air was warm and water didn't bite. You'd splash a little stream water on your toes and think, wow, I'm really taking care of myself. Now, you wouldn't dip your pinky toe in a puddle if it meant impressing the queen. Because clean feet in winter mean wet feet, and wet feet mean cold feet, and cold feet mean that special, sharp pain that starts as a tingle and ends as a funeral. So no, nobody bathes. Not really. A wipe here, a rinse there, maybe a desperate vinegar foot rub if you're feeling brave. But actual washing? with actual water. Absolutely not. You once saw your cousin try. Said she couldn't sleep with dirty soles, so she dunked her feet in a bucket of melt water. She didn't sleep. She screamed. Then she cried. Then she wrapped her feet in hot turnip mash and cursed her decisions until spring. Lesson learned. Now your feet live in socks made from old skirts, layers of hay, bits of curtain, wrapped like little swamp mummies. And beneath all that, skin so dry it could be used to write messages on, calloused, cracked, gloriously unwashed, and yet still here, still yours, still unfrostbitten. Your great uncle claims he hasn't seen soap in 7 years. He says his toes are stronger for it. He calls them nature's boots. One of them is purple. No one asks questions. Someone once tried to invent winter foot bathing by warming stones and placing them in buckets. The buckets cracked. The water spilled. A child cried. The entire cottage smelled like boiled dirt for a week. That was the last attempt. Now, people just compare whose feet have gone the longest without touching water. I'm on week 5, someone brags. Week 7, another says. The frost burned off the smell. And there's Grandma, sipping her tea, proudly muttering, Winter keeps the filth in place. She's not wrong. Your feet don't smell. They don't even feel anymore. They've transcended regular hygiene. They've entered a new realm of survival, gritty, flaky, and gloriously dry. Sure, they might leave behind dusty footprints. Sure, the dog might sniff them with visible concern. But they're warmish and still attached. That's a win. You flex your toes by the fire. The skin doesn't quite bend like it used to. But who needs flexibility when you've got functionality? Bathing can wait. Spring can worry about that. For now, your feet are unbathed, unbothered, and undeniably victorious. It wasn't clean. It wasn't fragrant. But it was survival. And somehow, that was enough. You pull on your tunic. Scratchy, stained, and stiff in all the wrong places. And for a brief moment, you consider asking the universe a question. Is this what I've become? But you don't ask. Because the answer is yes. Yes, this is what you've become. A walking bundle of soot, dirt, and sheep fur. And apparently, that's fashion now. Not because it looks good, not because it feels good, but because it's all that's left between you and the kind of cold that turns toes into relics. You used to care about clothes, back when seasons were suggestions and laundry was a concept. You'd dream of linen, maybe dyed wool, if you were feeling bold, a little embroidery, if someone in the family had extra time and fewer blisters. Now, now your winter wardrobe is made entirely of things that used to smell alive. Your outer layer is sheep fur, not a coat, not something tanned and tailored, just fur, cut unevenly, still matted, smells like the sheep, feels like guilt. You wrap it around your shoulders like a survival medal, 1 part cloak, 2 parts questionable hygiene. Beneath that, dirt, layers of it, pressed into your tunic, ground into your leggings, living under your fingernails like a second skin. It's not that you've stopped cleaning, it's just that the cleaning stopped working. And the soot is everywhere, from the fire, from the cooking pot, from the time you tried to dry your socks over the flames, and one of them caught fire, but you wore it anyway, because fashion. There's soot on your elbows, your cheeks, your blanket. There's a permanent gray smudge on your nose, and you've stopped trying to wipe it off. It's part of your look now. Someone once said you looked earthy. You decided to take it as a compliment. Everyone in the village looks like this. Your cousin wears a full patch of unprocessed sheep wool on his chest like a vest. It was supposed to be a gift for trade. Now it's body armor. The neighbor girl wrapped soot-smeared linen around her head and called it a hood. It looked like a chimney got in a fight with a scarf and lost. Someone tried to wash a tunic last week, hung it outside to dry. It froze, snapped, shattered like a bad idea. No one's tried since. Now, the rule is, if you can still walk in it, you wear it. Does it have holes? Good. That's ventilation. Does it smell? Great. It masks worse smells. Is it heavy? Perfect. That means it's working. Your outfit today includes 2 skirts, one formerly brown, now a mysterious shade of charcoaly tunic that used to belong to someone you didn't ask about, one sleeve of fur, tied with rope socks made from curtain rags, and a prayer, and boots that are technically 2 mismatched shoes fighting for dominance. You walk outside. Everyone looks like variations of the same tragic painting. Some are wrapped in sackcloth, others in fur that still has twigs in it. One man just taped hay to his shins and said, "It's avant-garde." And honestly, it kind of is. Because in this village, in this winter, fashion isn't about style. It's about staying alive. You don't wear clothes. You wear layers of defeat stitched together with resourcefulness and dirt. And somehow, it's beautiful in the kind of way where no one makes eye contact, but everyone understands. You catch your reflection in a cracked bit of metal hanging on the wall, soot on your chin, wool on your head, a chicken feather sticking out of your sleeve. You nod at yourself, approvingly. You're still standing, still warm, still here. It wasn't clean, it wasn't coordinated, but it was fashion, and somehow that was enough. You're standing in the middle of the cottage, wrapped in 3 layers of itchy wool, shivering so hard your bones feel like maracas. And that's when someone says it, dead serious, no smile, no irony. Dance to stay warm. You don't move. You don't blink, because you're not sure if it's a joke or your new lifestyle. Turns out, it's not a joke. 2 minutes later, everyone in the room is stomping, wobbling, flapping their arms like injured pigeons, and calling it dancing, because the fire went out again, because the floor is ice, because someone stole the last dry blanket, and because shivering quietly wasn't cutting it anymore. So now you're dancing, kind of, not gracefully, not with music, more like panicked convulsions set to the beat of pure survival. Someone starts clapping, not because it helps, just because their hands are going numb and they need to remember they still exist. You bounce on your heels. 1, 2, 3. The right foot sticks to the floor slightly. Is that frozen hay? Doesn't matter. You keep going, because this is winter now. You don't dance to celebrate. You dance to keep your blood moving. You glance at your little brother. He's hopping from foot to foot like a startled goat. His scarf is trailing behind him like a very slow cape. He looks ridiculous. You nod in respect. Grandma's in the corner, doing what might be a squat or a curse. Hard to tell. Even the dog is moving, spinning in frantic circles near the hearth like it, too, has accepted this as reality. There's no music, just the creak of the floorboards, the soft slap of feet against packed earth, and the occasional, deeply emotional grunt of someone trying not to cry from cold. And still, no one laughs, because this isn't funny. This is how we stay warm, now, dancing, or, rather, stumbling with intention. Someone starts chanting, something rhythmic, something vaguely unhinged. The beat catches, feet move faster, hips sway, knees unlock. You almost break a sweat. Someone shouts, "Feel that? That's circulation." You want to say, "No, that's my ankle giving out." But you're too busy two-stepping toward survival. Your cousin slips, falls, rolls, gets up. "Keep moving," someone yells. "Don't let the cold win." You didn't know this was a war, but now you're in it. And your weapon? Flailing. You slap your arms against your chest. You stomp harder. You sway like a sad willow tree in a windstorm. And somehow, it works. Tiny pinpricks of warmth bloom in your hands. Your cheeks flush. Your toes complain less. Your fingers remember what fingers do. You look around. Nobody's smiling. Nobody's mocking. Because every single person is just one slow foot away from frostbite. And this chaos, this undignified, floor-thumping mess, this is unity. This is community. This is heated desperation turned into a group activity. After 10 minutes, someone collapses onto a stool, wheezing, sweating, glowing faintly with body heat. Success. You slow down, breathe hard, check your pulse to confirm you're alive. You are, for a second now. You look down at your feet, muddy, wrapped in burlap, and somehow steaming. They made it. You made it. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't music. But it was movement. And somehow, that was enough. You're lying there, in a bed that crunches when you roll over, staring up at the ceiling and pretending you're warm. You're not. You're a meat popsicle wrapped in damp wool. But it's okay, because tonight, you've got something better than heat. You've got a story. Across the room, someone whispers, "Did you know the Baron's daughter has 10 pairs of socks?" 10. Not 2. 10. You can't even picture that. What does that even look like? A drawer that smells like lavender instead of moldy potatoes? Matching pairs that don't require twine? It's absurd. It's hilarious. It's basically fantasy. But it gets better. She has red ones, the voice continues, with lace on the edges, wears them under her boots just to feel fancy. You snort into your hay pillow. Fancy socks. What a wild, useless idea. Your socks haven't matched since last frost. One's made of curtain, the other's technically half a mitten, and they're still charred from that one night you got too close to the fire. But you lean in, because the stories help. They always do. The rich, you see, had things: wool, silk, warm slippers with little rabbit fur cuffs. They had fireplaces in every room and probably bathed indoors. But you had stories, like the one where the Duke imported socks from the East. spun with gold thread, got a rash, screamed so loud the geese stopped laying eggs for a week, or the tale of the noblewoman who dropped a sock on the street and made a footman chase it for 3 miles through mud, only to toss it in the fire when she got bored, or the soldier who froze on the battlefield because his boots were beautiful but completely hollow, socks silk lined but useless, dead fancy. You love these stories, not because they're warm, because they're ours. Because in your world, you wrap your feet in hay, in bark, in whatever wasn't already chewed on by mice. You tie rags with string and call it functional. You whisper to your toes at night like they're old friends hanging on by willpower alone, and somehow you're still here. You remember one winter, the really bad one, when everyone in the house wore the same pair of socks, passed around, rotated nightly like a sacred relic, stiff with use, smelled like soup and regret, but they were warm, kind of. You told a story every night to distract from how bad they smelled, one about a magical sock that made whoever wore it invisible, but only below the knees. Everyone laughed, toes wiggled, spirits lifted. You didn't get frostbite that year. Tonight, someone's curled up near the hearth, whispering a tale of the merchant who wore socks made of swan feathers and slipped on his own ego, broke both ankles, cried into a velvet pillow. You chuckle softly, pulling the blanket higher. Someone else whispers a plot twist. Someone gasps. The room isn't warmer. Not really, but it feels warmer because socks keep you alive. But stories? Stories make you human. And in this bitter, toe-freezing, fire-starved winter, you need that more than wool. The rich had socks. The poor had stories. And somehow, that was enough. You wake up, blink once, and realize something's different. Not better, exactly. Not comfortable, but different. You can hear the drip, drip, drip from the roof, down the walls, into the bucket that's been catching snowmelt and family arguments all winter. It's not snow, it's water. And for the first time in what feels like your entire short, slightly frostbitten life, spring has come. You sit up slowly. Your blanket no longer crunches. The air doesn't stab. The dog isn't curled in a frozen spiral of despair. He's sprawled, openly, confidently, like he owns the place. You glance down at your feet, braced for disaster. But they're still there, sort of. They're rough, peeling, look like they've been personally chewed on by winter itself. Your left pinky toe is suspiciously quiet. Your big toe is shaped differently now, but they're yours. You wiggle them, just to be sure. Ouch. Still hurt, but still here. Across the room, someone's cracking open the window. The window, voluntarily. There's air coming in that doesn't feel like it wants to kill you. It smells muddy, a little rank, like wet grass and leftover smoke, but also alive. You hear birds. Birds, they sound confused, like they forgot this place existed. You stretch out your legs, let your feet dangle off the bed. For a second, they touch the floor without screaming. It's cold, yes, but not cruel. You sit there, blinking in disbelief, watching sunlight spill across the planks like it's apologizing for the last 4 months. The fire's out, and no one is panicking. Grandma's unwrapping her feet, slowly, carefully, like she's revealing a national secret. They made it, she whispers, and for once, she's not exaggerating. Your cousin pulls off their fifth sock layer and holds it up like a victory flag. It's crispy, but intact. You almost cheer. There's talk of a bath, a real one, with water and soap. You haven't heard the word soap since December, when someone tried to eat it by mistake. Someone else mentions shoes. Proper ones, they say. Ones with soles. You blink. You forgot shoes even had soles. But the idea is thrilling and terrifying, because spring, as glorious as it is, comes with consequences. You have to unlayer. You have to peel off the socks you've been emotionally attached to. You might have to look at your toes in daylight, but that's a small price because the ice is melting, the sun is climbing, and you survived, barely, emotionally scarred, possibly permanently hobbling, but alive. The floor is no longer your enemy. The air is no longer a weapon. Your feet no longer belong to the snow. You limp outside and plant both soles on the wet earth. The cold shoots up your legs. You hiss. You smile because it still hurts. But you made it. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't easy. It wasn't warm, but it was enough. And now there's sun. There's thaw. There's time. You wiggle your toes again. They don't thank you, but they don't leave either. And that, in this village, is a happy ending.